As the Falcons continue their search for a new head coach, it seems Terry Fontenot is in limbo. He wasn't present at the press conference when Arthur Blank and Rich McKay took questions after the termination of Arthur Smith. Heck, Rich McKay said that his role is subject to change depending on the head coaching hire. And if you ask any national pundit in the media, the favorite is Bill Belichick, who's notorious for having autonomy in New England with the Patriots. He was the de facto GM and the head coach. He was responsible for pretty much all personnel decision making. And I think it's fair to wonder just how involved Fontenot is going to be if the Falcons do end up with Bill Belichick in Atlanta, Chase.
Yeah, it seems like Terry Fontenot got into a mess that he didn't know what he was getting into when he signed up for this job. He's definitely a neuter GM. He doesn't have traditional general manager powers. He's not going to be too involved in the head coaching decision, especially if it's a guy like Belichick. He could totally be against something like that. And you just wonder if he's thinking, wow, I made a mistake coming here, which definitely wasn't the sounds that he was saying when he signed up for the position. If Bill Belichick is hired by the Falcons, I really hope to God that Terry Fontenot sticks around. I think one of the biggest things that Bill Belichick has struggled with is personnel decisions and stuff like that. I think we've seen some good things from Terry Fontenot in the draft, whether they were all his decisions or how much Arthur Smith was involved. We don't really know. We definitely know he's done some fantastic things on the pro personnel side of things. And I just think, having that collaborative effort would be good for all parties involved. I don't need Bill Belichick and if you get rid of Terry Fontenot, you're giving Bill Belichick autonomy because we've already talked about the Rich McKay thing. He might be gone if Bill Belichick is gone. Yep. So that's a good thing, but it would be a negative if Terry Fontenot is gone because I don't want Bill Belichick making all the decisions in Atlanta.
Yeah, I think what's an important aspect in all of this is that some Falcons fans are just, assuming that Bill Belichick is not going to have personnel decision-making power and that Arthur Blank has, made that clear, whatever. I think you're delusional because if another head coaching gig opens up or two, let's say the Eagles or the Cowboys, and Arthur Blank is trying to sell Bill Belichick on choosing Atlanta over Philly or Dallas, giving him autonomy would certainly make it a little bit more desirable to come to Atlanta. Whereas Dallas, that's not going to happen with Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones is not giving up personnel decision-making power. And Howie Roseman is one of the most well-respected GMs in the entire sport, across any sport, really. So the fact is the most, if that is what he is searching for, autonomy like he had in New England. I know he said at a press conference about a month ago that he doesn't need personnel decision-making power, but I guarantee you the guy's a psycho. He'd like to have his thumb on every single aspect of the organization. And if it comes down to a couple of decisions between Bill Belichick and Arthur Blank is trying to make a last-second push, I think it's entirely possible that he throws that on the table like, hey, you can have it. We can get rid of Terry Fontenot because, as you said, Rich McKay is this guy's butt buddy way more than Terry Fontenot. And if he's willing to potentially oust him of the organization to get Bill Belichick to Atlanta, you're a fool if you don't think he'd do the same to Terry Fontenot.
Yeah, it's the old desperation thing. I mean, how desperate is Arthur Blank to get Bill Belichick to Atlanta? I mean, if I'm Belichick, and listen, I'm not Bill Belichick, and Bill Belichick is a psychopath, and I do agree with you. Like, in his perfect world, he probably does have autonomy over everything because like we've talked about Belichick this entire time, a lot of his things are about trust. He's going to bring in the same coordinators. He's going to bring in a lot of players that he's familiar with that know how to play his system and that trust him. I don't think that's the best course of action. I think if you're trying to save Belichick from himself, you're probably trying to at least say, hey, Terry Fontenot is going to be here to, at the very least, aid you, and you're going to make collaborative decisions. But at the end of the day, someone's going to have that ruling power, whether that's Arthur Blank, which is not exactly what you want because who knows what he's going to side with. And I don't really want him having ruling power. Whether that's Rich McKay, if somehow he sticks on board with Belichick on board, or whether that's Bill Belichick or Terry Fontenot, someone is going to make the final decision. And at the end of the day, that's what autonomy is all about. So whoever has the right to make the final decision, which I don't know how much Terry Fontenot has had that at all over the course of his tenure as Atlanta general manager. If I'm Terry Fontenot and Bill Belichick comes along, I mean, I'm probably like, I'm ready to be out of here. Like, I don't know if he can get out of his contract, but I'm sure he's not eager to get himself into that situation. That's definitely not what he signed up for.
Yeah, and I think this was a very is valuable insight from a former GM, a former NFL GM. Randy Mueller of The Athletic, he was a former GM, said this, kind of relating to Fontenot's situation of being in limbo. This is from Mueller. I've been there. When Nick Saban left the Dolphins to return to college football at Alabama, I was left 100% in limbo as the GM, just like Fontenot. Then owner Wayne, blah, 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 I don't know how to say his name, and team president Joe Bailey interviewed coaching candidates, determining whether they would be okay with me remaining as the GM. Owner and Bailey could not hamstring their search by forcing any coach to take me on as a partner if he didn't want to. I understood this without having to spell it out and accepted it. That seems a lot like the situation that's going on in Atlanta between Fontenot and this coaching search. I mean, am I wrong?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's limited to just Bill Belichick,
No,
especially
agreed.
with Rich McKay involved in all of this,
Yep.
and Rich McKay seemingly having the final decision on a lot of these decisions. So, yeah, it seems like it's not just the Belichick thing. I don't really know. I mean, I think we talked about this last week. I know I wrote about it. When Terry Fontenot didn't show up to the press conference, I think that told you all you really needed to know, that he's not a huge part of this. For sure, a huge part of this organization moving forward. And there's a very good chance that they clean house, whether it's Belichick, Harbaugh, or somebody else.
And it's a shame because he's done a lot of great work. I don't want this video to hit YouTube or Fox and everybody kind of think that we're against Fontenot. I think Fontenot should be kept regardless. I think his value should be, weighed even more. I think he's done nothing but succeed with the task that he's been handed. I think he's done more than enough to deserve more responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at these last two draft classes, they really look like they could be home runs, especially this last one they just had. I know the first one was a little shaky, but then you look at the personnel side, pro personnel side of things. I mean, I can't think of a time. The Falcons have gone out there and wasted money my entire life on terrible players. There's been very few guys. I mean, you can talk about Alex Mack and Jonathan Abraham, but like Terry Fontenot has gotten guys like that in 2 years. And that we're talking about 10, 15 years sample size. Thomas Dimitroff couldn't go out and get guys like that. Terry Fontenot has stepped in immediately on the pro personnel side of things and been hugely impactful. So it would be a shame that if at the very least he isn't in charge of those situations moving forward.
Yeah, he was good at penny pinching, a la Cordell Patterson. And then when he finally had money, he hit on every single big contract the Falcons handed out. The three biggest contracts they handed out: Jesse Bates, All-Pro, Caden Ellis, everybody loves him, and David Onyemata just turned in one of the best seasons of his career. I mean, that's strike.
I agree. Coming up after the break, a scout, a veteran scout, refers to top prospect Jose Perdomo as a young Miguel Cabrera.